Good evening, everybody. 12 days until the election, an election that, as the Republican nominee declares, is rigged. There is no question about whether this election is rigged, only about the degree. Donald Trump has been sounding the alarm for months, and now evidence that he is exactly right is mounting. The Republican nominee today tweeted this: a lot of call-ins about vote flipping at the voting booths in Texas. People are not happy. Big lines. What is going on? A fair question. What is going on in Texas? And what has been discovered in North Texas, where there is the largest number of claims of voter fraud? And obviously important questions, so far unanswered. In Indiana, a statewide investigation of electoral fraud underway. State police have found evidence of fraud. In Virginia, the FBI is investigating reports that dead people have recently registered to vote. On this broadcast, we suspect that they had some help in doing so. And more allegations of fraud have surfaced in Missouri, Texas, Oklahoma, and Colorado. We'll be taking up those concerns with some of the best political analysts here tonight. Tony Sayegh, Ebony Williams, Mike Gallagher, Chris Plant, they join us. Also among our guests, former UN Ambassador John Bolton. And the Media Research Center's Rich Noyes joins us as well. His group has just put out a study finding nearly all the mainstream liberal media coverage of Donald Trump has been not only negative, it's been downright hostile. A lot to talk about here tonight, including the latest WikiLeaks release, more evidence of pay-to-play and bribery at the Clinton Foundation, corruption within the campaign itself, corrupted by, it appears, the candidate herself. Longtime Clinton confidant Doug Band wrote a 12-page memo in which he brags about how he made former President Bill Clinton filthy rich, generating $100 million of personal income for him. Donald Trump today campaigning in Ohio. There he blasted the stench of corruption emanating from the Clinton cartel.
Just today we read about Clinton confidant Doug Band bragging that he had funneled tens of millions of dollars to Bill Clinton, Inc. through the foundation donations, paid speeches, and consulting contracts. Mr. Band called the arrangement unorthodox. The rest of us call it outright corrupt.
That only one of three rallies that Donald Trump holding in the state of Ohio today. He's holding another event in Geneva, Ohio, scheduled for this hour, and we'll be bringing it to you when Donald Trump takes the stage. Our top story tonight, WikiLeaks releasing a bombshell email today. The Clinton campaign struggling to deal with Bill Clinton's sex scandals. An email from January of this year laying out some of the key questions that Hillary might have to face from the media. Questions including, will you apologize to the women who were wrongly smeared by your husband and his allies? And how is what Bill Clinton did different from what Bill Cosby did? The latest emails also reveal the shock and the anger surrounding Clinton's decision to use a private email server for official government business. Neera Tanden, she currently helps run the Clinton campaign transition team, emailed Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta in the summer of 2015. Quote, do we actually know who told Hillary she could use a private email? And has that person been drawn and quartered? Like the whole thing is bleeping insane. Also spelling out damaging emails from former Clinton intimate Doug Band, who laid out how Bill Clinton lined his pockets by steering donors for the Clinton Foundation to hire him for speeches and consulting, corruption throughout the entire Clinton cartel. As to the size of the monies involved, well, a 2011 memo reveals the plan yielded more than $30 million for him personally, with $66 million to be paid out later. That is a lot of speaking. Joining me now to talk about the massive Clinton cartel corruption and cronyism exposed in these latest emails dropped by WikiLeaks versus Trump's call to drain the swamp. We're joined tonight by attorney Ebony Williams, Republican campaign strategist Tony Sayegh, both Fox News contributors. This is getting worse by the day. WikiLeaks is, and I'm going to say it again, irrespective of those who have any distress or any claim against WikiLeaks, the fact is they are doing a job the national liberal media refuses to do, revealing the corruption and the scale and the dimension of that corruption in this campaign.
Well, look, Lou, I know they're not your favorite publication, but even the New York Times today had to lead with this. That is how mainstream and obvious this has become at this point. And look, she can't run from this. This is something that many people have suspected. Look, I've been saying for a long time now, I believe a lot of things about Hillary Clinton, not that she's stupid. And I believe that she absolutely knew the risk involved, and she decided that the financial benefit, Lou, was more worth it to her than to do the steps that her own advisors, we saw Cheryl Mills saying, resign yourself from the board. We saw people telling her steps to take to avoid this type of impropriety, and she simply refused to do it because I submit that the rewards fiscally were too high.
If it were not for WikiLeaks, Tony, we wouldn't know this. We would not know the scale, the scope of this abject breach of public trust and corruption.
Isn't it incredible that our own FBI can't get access to this information, yet some hacker overseas can? Lou, it really does go to the bottom line, which is the Clinton Foundation has been fundamentally corrupted by the idea that they could have profited off Hillary Clinton's position as Secretary of State. Now, whether or not that's criminal, that's for others to decide. It's certainly unethical. That's beyond a shadow of a doubt. You look at what Doug Vance said in a very testy exchange with Chelsea Clinton. He himself, Bill Clinton's chief fundraiser, said Bill Clinton had about 500 conflict of interest violations that could have been very damaging should they have come out. Well, guess what? They just did. So what's the mainstream media going to do? Ebony's exactly right. It's so unavoidable that even publications like the New York Times has to cover it somewhat. It's come out a little late, but if Donald Trump allows people to focus on it, it could really be damaging.
The New York Times, every other liberal left-wing publication in this country that has endorsed her, based on what we see here now, should withdraw those endorsements, and they should do it immediately, or they're every bit as corrupt as she is. And that entire Clinton cartel is, I mean, the smell is permeating the nation now.
So it makes me think, Lou, that at this point, her supporters or backers either assume that that's just a part of doing business with the Clintons, this type of corruption and backdoor dealings, or they really do believe that this is all just some major conspiracy. But I think it's harder and harder for those people to believe that, guys, now that more and more mounting evidence, again, even being submitted by friendly, if we will, sources.
Well, the reality is they think they're going to win. So for them to interrupt the course that they feel is going to lead to a victory is not
It's no longer about them, though, Tony. I mean, really, we know what they are. They've identified themselves as the most corrupt couple in American political history.
Lou, that's exactly right. The point being that 2 weeks ago, ABC came out with FOIA documents that show that Bill Clinton's friends, his cronies, his donors, were treated especially with favoritism by the State Department for contracts relating to Haitian earthquake relief. We learned last week that Hillary Clinton herself orchestrated a $12 million fee to speak in Morocco with the King of Morocco, a regime she in 2011 said was corrupt and committing human rights violations. The point being, if Donald Trump could have calls for his withdrawal for comments he made as a private citizen, albeit completely inappropriate, in 2005, how is it that the media, the Democratic phalanx around Hillary Clinton's campaign doesn't do the same? My point is they're just riding this one out.
You're making a very good point, Tony, which is that we're really talking about two instances of both public and private faces. That's actually a very, very good point. Very good point.
Well, and the reality is there's no question about where the New York Times is or the Washington Post or Jeff Bezos, who owns it and who hasn't got the integrity to stand up and say his publication that he drove in this attack mode throughout this campaign has been wrong, wrong, and wrong. And he owes an apology to the American people and all of his readers. I mean, this is just appalling on every level. Tony, thanks for being with us. Ebony,
thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Donald Trump earlier today hitting Hillary Clinton over her criticism of Russian President Vladimir Putin.
She speaks so badly of Putin. Nuclear country, she speaks so badly. I say, and she uses it to try and get votes. I said to myself, you know, how do you speak so badly of somebody? I mean, how are they going to ever get along? Wouldn't it be great if we actually got along with Russia and other countries? And we together went after ISIS and knocked the hell out of them?
Now, I mean, it's remarkable that Donald Trump is making a reasonable, rational, sophisticated appeal to the better spirits and nature of American office holders, lawmakers, policymakers, and being ridiculed from the left for so doing. And to show you how far the mainstream left-wing media has gone, consider this. More than 30 years ago, Margaret Thatcher said these words: "I like Mr. Gorbachev. We can do business together." That the leader of the Soviet Union, in which we had been in a Cold War since the end of World War II. And yet she was a visionary, and our left-wing media is so reflexive in its orthodoxy that it attacks Donald Trump rather than listening to what the man is saying. Extraordinary, the times that we live in. Former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, American Enterprise Institute, senior fellow John Bolton joining us. He's also a Fox News contributor. Ambassador, great to have you with us. I have to say, the ignorance and the hostility of the left-wing media in this country is now overwhelming and obvious to even the most reluctant observer of national politics. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I don't think there's been an election that I recall where the bias of the so-called mainstream press has been more evident, and we could pick a lot of subjects. You've picked what she says about Vladimir Putin. Look, it should be perfectly obvious that what she's trying to do is cover up the consequences of her 4 years as Secretary of State and the continuation of the Obama administration now for almost another 4, which has followed the same policy. These were the people who said, you know, Russian relations, U.S. relations are so bad after the evil George W. Bush administration that we will press the reset button and everything will be fine. And they gave concession after concession to Putin, and look at where we are now.
And the point being that there is unreal politic at work here now. This administration is run by a gaggle of fools in national security. The results have been disastrous, not only for us, but for Europe, for much of the world, and the direction that we are headed and will be continuing on that path should Hillary Clinton, by some stroke of extremely bad fortune, become president. I mean, this madness will continue.
Yeah, look, this is why I think it's pretty clear that from the Kremlin's own logic, they would prefer to have Hillary Clinton as president. Putin has seen her in action. He's met with her over the 4-year period she was Secretary of State. He knows her worldview, which is fundamentally the same as Obama's. He sees that she's weak, she's indecisive, she's bureaucratic. So given that choice, why not have Obama's 3rd term? That's what Hillary is campaigning on. That's what Obama says she will bring. If I were Vladimir Putin, I'd say bring it on.
Also, what has been brought by the Obama administration without a single foreign policy success to its credit in almost 8 years, the FBI has now been fully corrupted, the Justice Department fully corrupted in their leadership. My God, can we fix this? I mean, as we look at the donations coming from the Justice Department, the State Department, in this campaign that are flowing, and I'm talking about 98, 99% of those donations from those employees in the Obama administration, I mean, somebody is going to have to clean this sewer up in Washington, D.C., or more accurately, as Donald Trump says, drain this damn swamp.
Well, look, speaking as an alumnus of the Department of Justice from the Reagan years, and somebody who worked with the FBI then, worked with the FBI during the time I was at the State Department, am happy to cooperate with the FBI in their ongoing endeavors today. This so-called investigation of Hillary's email scandal and the complete absence of an investigation of the Clinton Foundation
No, it's not the absence of an investigation. The investigators did their job, John. They had a recommendation, by all accounts that we have heard from those who want to remain anonymous, but agents, they all wanted unanimously to bring a prosecution against her. And furthermore, unanimously, they wanted her security clearance eliminated.
Right. I think on the email side, that's going to bear out. I just think we need to find a way for some of these agents to come public, to resign, to find ways to protect them as whistleblowers.
You know,
but
that hasn't worked out well. John, we know what we've got in front of us.
Far.
We know what we can smell this stench, you know, all the way to the other coast. I mean,
no, well, that's why if we had
a country that's got to be able to say, you know what, this stinks to high heaven, and we're not going to tolerate it. Yeah. But I don't see that happening.
Well, not if Hillary's elected, that's for sure. This is a stain on the FBI and the Department of Justice.
How do you elect somebody who has her record, who is connected to the Clinton cartel's corruption in every instant, almost every instant, in the WikiLeaks releases? I mean, look at the Wall Street Journal reporting. I mean, you go through the whole list of it. It's impossible to even imagine.
No, if this were a Republican accused of these kinds of activities, it would be the Washington Post and the New York Times on a daily basis. And, you know, we see a story occasionally. They're not going to cover it between now and the election, that's for sure.
Well, that wasn't an entreaty on my part. It was really, I guess I was beseeching the American people to wake up and act accordingly, and that is make damn sure we do not prolong into perpetuity this level of corruption, or this country is lost.
Well, I think it's going to get worse. If this is what she and her husband were able to do when she served at the State Department, imagine the fields of opportunity open once they get the White House.
Ambassador John Bolton, with those ebullient words, we're going to have to say thank you, and we'll take it up next time. Great to have you with us, Ambassador.
Thank you, Lou.
John Bolton, be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Are you outraged that the national liberal media refuses to report on what is clearly and obviously the systemic corruption of the Clinton cartel? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. And follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. A few thoughts now on the overwhelming evidence, the weight of that evidence against the Clintons. Their collusion with the Obama State Department, the Obama Justice Department, the politicized FBI, the White House itself, and the swirling corruption that put huge sums of money in the hands of the Clintons. The Podesta emails from WikiLeaks reveal significant pay-to-play, outright bribery at the Clinton Foundation, throughout the Clinton cartel. The latest example, a 12-page memo from Doug Band, a Bill Clinton aide, laying out his unorthodox, as he put it, role in pushing Clinton Foundation donors to move their money over to Bill Clinton, to hire him for outrageous sums of money, for speeches, for consulting, for whatever. Particularly insidious because of Hillary's role as Secretary of State in the midst of most of those transgressions and conflicts. Just last week, a separate email from Band to Podesta revealed the former president received many expensive gifts from Clinton Global Initiative sponsors. As for Hillary, WikiLeaks revealed she arranged a $12 million donation from the Moroccan government to the Clinton Global Initiative in exchange for a meeting. Now, that's a pricey meeting. I wonder what else that meeting was to be about. WikiLeaks also revealed Podesta in March of last year accused former Clinton Foundation CEO Eric Braverman of telling a reporter to, quote, follow the money to find the real scandal. Braverman had abruptly resigned just a few months earlier. Of course, the WikiLeaks revelations are only part of the corruption that surrounds the Clinton Foundation. More than half of the meetings that Hillary Clinton took with people outside the Obama government while she was Secretary of State were with, yes, you guessed it, Clinton Foundation donors. Pay to play, pay to meet, pay for whatever else they got. Clinton also met with representatives of at least 16 foreign governments. Those governments donated up to $170 million. And don't forget Raj Fernando, who was appointed to a State Department Intelligence Advisory Board in 2011, despite the fact he had no relevant experience whatsoever for the post other than his work to raise money for the Clinton campaign and as donor to the Clinton Foundation. And the obviously corrupt transaction that the Clinton Foundation received tens of millions of dollars from investors in that Canadian uranium firm. Let's linger over that for a moment. Tens of millions of dollars. They were seeking government approval for a deal with Russia, Uranium One. The result of the transaction was the transfer of ownership of 20% of American uranium reserves to the Russians. The Clinton cartel still has not deigned to answer inquiries about the Uranium One deal. And with only 12 days remaining until the election, the national left-wing media obviously will not be demanding answers or accountability at this late date on the part of the Obama administration or the Clinton cartel or the Democratic presidential nominee. They all smell to high heaven. And were she voted into office, that stench would fill our White House. A horrible thought to contemplate. Our quotation of the evening, this one appropriately on honor. In short supply these days in our nation's capital, but in this momentous election, it has never been in greater demand. Andrew Jackson said this of honor. Every good citizen makes his country's honor his own and cherishes it not only as precious, but as sacred. He is willing to risk his life in its defense, and it's conscious that he gains protection while he gives it. As we approach Election Day, the question is, do we have enough good citizens to return our government to the people? We'll ponder that. Meanwhile, a few words from our sponsors. We'll be right back with much, much more. Stay with us. Unfair it is, a new study by the Media Research Center has found that 91% of Donald Trump's media coverage has been negative, even hostile. Joining me now to discuss the study and much more, Research Director at the Media Research Center, Rich Noyes. Rich, good to have you with us. This is like we've never seen before. I don't know if you've done a historical comparison, but I have never seen these ratios between two candidates so disparate, so wide, and so decidedly one-sided.
I've been doing this since 1988, and I've never seen coverage like this. I mean, it's not just the negative ratio that Trump has, it's the intensity. I mean, he's getting about 3 or 4 times more evaluative statements than Hillary Clinton is. He's the topic of most of the nightly news discussion. And I should explain, to calculate this spin ratio, we stripped away, Trump's talking about Hillary Clinton or himself, Hillary talking about Trump or herself. Right. We made it just reporter comments. They're nonpartisan experts, voters. This is the spin that the newscasts are presenting. And it's 91% negative on Trump. He's getting much more coverage than Hillary Clinton, and most of the coverage are about his controversies, not her controversies, in spite of how serious her controversies are.
Well, the idea that the national media has chosen to ignore effectively nearly all of the allegations of Bill Clinton, even though the WikiLeaks documents reveal that the campaign was most concerned that he would be juxtaposed against Bill Cosby for the allegations against him. But in Bill Clinton's case, there's been adjudication. There has been proof. There has been the reality of what has happened, and those women have come forward. And famously, we remember the 4 of them at a debate being ignored in totality by the left-wing media.
Yeah, no, the number one topic for this fall campaign, we looked at from the conventions through the 3rd debate, 102 minutes of airtime was Donald Trump and women. There was only 7 minutes of discussion of Bill Clinton and his past, and most of that was about how unfair it was for Donald Trump to bring it up.
And looking at these scandals that are being revealed, what we have seen just from what WikiLeaks has revealed to the American public is enough for these newspapers, their editorial boards, their publishers to withdraw their endorsement of a campaign that is so obviously corrupt, so impugned by fact and reality that it is, I mean, it's disgusting. The smell that surrounds this whole public corruption case against the Clintons, the Clinton cartel, the Clinton campaign, the Clinton Foundation, it's extraordinary and unprecedented.
Look, this was the Democratic nominee this year was under criminal investigation by the FBI in the year she ran. That's not the top story on the network. You'd think that would be prohibitive. Her email scandal got 40 minutes of coverage. You know, that is a small fraction of what Trump got for women. 20 minutes on the Clinton Foundation pay-to-play, 2 minutes on Benghazi. These are all scandals that go right to the heart of whether she can ethically or competently function as president, and they're being pushed to the back of the line so they can talk about Trump and statements he makes that might rub people the wrong way, or the allegations about women.
The two largest newspapers in the country, that is the Washington Post and the New York Times, have exceptional owners, I'll put it that way. Jeff Bezos, who himself is committed to destroying the candidacy, obviously, of Donald Trump. Carlos Slim, the largest single shareholder now in the New York Times. Obviously, both organizations being driven anti-Trump, in the most anti-democratic fashion, if I can put it that way. Rich, what in the world should the American people do in response? Do you see a wake-up here? Do you see an alarm? Or do you see more ennui and apathy and indifference?
Well, I think, you know, every cycle it grows the number of people who do not trust the press. The press, you know, have been proving themselves not to be honest brokers when it comes to covering liberals versus conservatives, Democrats versus Republicans. This is just the most extreme case.
Rich. I really don't. Because I don't see deceit, deception, duplicity on the part of anyone but the left-wing media. I mean, this is right. Extraordinary. And their candidates are being held up in judgment by public opinion and obviously the voters on November 8th.
Right. And voters, I think, are losing trust if they're ever, you know, what to the extent they had it in that press. Right. But I think the owners you talked about, they could not do that if they didn't have rank-and-file journalists who believed in that worldview as well. If they were all conservative journalists, it wouldn't work.
I'm not worried. Believe me. The last thing I would question is whether or not there's a shared worldview, and it's entirely globalist, and it's entirely left-wing on those two publications and most of the national media. Rich, we've gone way over. Right. You make me do that. Thanks for being with us, Rich Noyes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. A federal jury in Portland, Oregon. Get ready. Justice lives in America. That jury has just found Ammon Bundy and 6 co-defendants not guilty on all counts. They had been charged with conspiracy for taking over a federal wildlife refuge building in eastern Oregon to make protest. Bundy claimed they were engaging in a peaceful protest, and the Bundys were challenging federal authority and control of western public lands. It's a major issue. You don't hear much about it, but it is critical to the nation's future. And it's resulted in the imprisonment of 2 ranchers convicted, in my judgment, absolutely unjustly, unfairly, and un-American, because they set controlled fires on federal land they had leased. Extraordinary what is happening there. Justice prevails, and thank you, Oregon. Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Are you outraged that the national liberal media refuses to report on the systemic corruption of the Clinton cartel? We'd like to hear from you on this. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. And, you know, we'd like to hear from you on November 8th as well. More Clinton cartel corruption. WikiLeaks exposing a memo from top Bill Clinton aide Doug Van that detailed how he helped the former president make millions of dollars. The memo raising even more questions of pay-to-play within the Clinton Foundation and what is largely regarded as the Clinton cartel itself. Fox News correspondent Doug McElway has our report.
Doug Band is at the center of the web of fundraising, charitable giving, and for-profit activities of the Clinton Foundation, or what he calls in his memo, Bill Clinton, Inc.
He was the architect of trying to make sure that they fully leveraged the foundation, fully leveraged all their contacts, so that Bill Clinton, who now was outside government while his wife was Secretary of State, could charge as much money for everything he did.
Band was a key Bill Clinton aide who used that connection to become a partner in Teneo Consulting, representing some of the largest companies in the world. If those companies wanted access to the Clintons, Band held the key.
He did not have much money to his name, and it was really just he and Doug Band together, this sort of two-man team that was off on their own in those early years after the White House. And Doug Band really kind of built him into this global brand.
But Band's price for access has become a political hot potato in the campaign homestretch.
Mr. Band called the arrangement unorthodox. The rest of us call it outright corrupt.
Even daughter Chelsea took note after an audit raised red flags. In November of 2011, she emailed Hillary's inner circle, quote, "My father was told today of explicit examples of Doug, Teneo, pushing for and receiving free memberships, and of multiple examples of Teneo hustling business at CGI." Chelsea's complaints sparked a feud between her and Band. He wrote 3 weeks later, quote, "This is the third time this week she has gone to Daddy to change a decision or interject herself in the process."
He was also resentful of her asserting that role. He saw her as what he's called in these emails a, quote, spoiled brat.
2 weeks after that, top Clinton aide Cheryl Mills fired off an email to Band outlining changes to the foundation's business model. A month later, after receiving a complimentary email from Chelsea, Band confided to Podesta and Mills, quote, "As they say, the apple doesn't fall far. A kiss on the cheek while she's sticking a knife in the back and front." Doug Band did not respond to our inquiries for comment. Teneo has told us that it did not receive any financial benefit, and the Clinton campaign told us it is still not confirming the authenticity of emails hacked by the Russian government to influence the election. Lou?
Doug, thank you very much. Doug McKelway. Up next, Donald Trump says he's tired of the same corrupt politicians running our nation's capital.
When we win, we are going to Washington, D.C., and we are going to drain the swamp.
Drain the swamp has a ring to it, doesn't it? Chris Plant, Mike Gallagher with me next. Stay with us. In our online poll, we wanted to bring you up to date on that. We asked you last night, do you believe these tightening polls are signals of rising momentum for Donald Trump? And 87% of you said yes. Joining us now, the host of the Chris Plant Show on WMAL, Chris Plant, host of the Mike Gallagher Show on the Salem Radio Network, Mike Gallagher. Wouldn't it be interesting if we inverted those names and the titles of the show? And I'm just kidding, guys. I know how we all are about those titles.
It's all in the branding.
Well, first, Chris, this town in which you live and work is fetid. It is so corrupt. It is so appalling. I mean, can you actually smell it in the air there these days?
Pretty much. I mean, honestly, you can. I was thinking about it when I was driving in. I kid you not. We have never lived. I've been here for almost 30 years, and I've never seen this town as corrupt, not even close, as it is now. And honestly, it's the Obama administration and it's the Clintons. The Department of Justice has been corrupted. The FBI has been corrupted. The IRS has been corrupted. The media has been corrupted. And now we have the Clintons who are looking to get back into the White House. I'm wondering if they move back into the White House, will they bring the furniture back that they stole last time they left, or will they leave that outside? But now we have the Clintons, and if the Clintons were only Republicans, the New York Times would declare them to be the most corrupt politicians in American history.
In either case, they would be right, and they would be right now if they had the guts, the courage, and the principle to do so.
And if there's and this is why Drain the Swamp is such a perfect image. I mean, once again, Trump comes along with the perfect imagery to cut right to the chase, the fetid stench of corruption that we're seeing every day, all the WikiLeaks stuff. I mean, Lou, it's like a fire hose. I mean, there's so much that comes at us. It's almost as if the American people can't comprehend just how bad the Clinton corruption is, but they're getting it, and that's why the polls are tightening, and that's why the wind right now is at Trump's back, and he's got so much momentum.
You know, honestly, I can't even imagine why anyone in this country, given all that we now know from WikiLeaks and for some of the terrific reporting that's been done principally by the Wall Street Journal, I don't understand why anybody would even think about voting for what are. Good evening, everybody. 12 days until the election, an election that, as the Republican nominee declares, is rigged. There is no question about whether this election is rigged, only about the degree. Donald Trump has been sounding the alarm for months, and now evidence that he is exactly right is mounting. The Republican nominee today tweeted this: a lot of call-ins about vote flipping at the voting booths in Texas. People are not happy. Big lines. What is going on? A fair question. What is going on in Texas? And what has been discovered in North Texas, where there is the largest number of claims of voter fraud? And obviously important questions, so far unanswered. In Indiana, a statewide investigation of electoral fraud underway. State police have found evidence of fraud. In Virginia, the FBI is investigating reports that dead people have recently registered to vote. On this broadcast, we suspect that they had some help in doing so. And more allegations of fraud have surfaced in Missouri, Texas, Oklahoma, and Colorado. We'll be taking up those concerns with some of the best political analysts here tonight. Tony Sayegh, Ebony Williams, Mike Gallagher, Chris Plant, they join us. Also among our guests, former UN Ambassador John Bolton. And the Media Research Center's Rich Noyes joins us as well. His group has just put out a study finding nearly all the mainstream liberal media coverage of Donald Trump has been not only negative, it's been downright hostile. A lot to talk about here tonight, including the latest WikiLeaks release, more evidence of pay-to-play and bribery at the Clinton Foundation, corruption within the campaign itself, corrupted by, it appears, the candidate herself. Longtime Clinton confidant Doug Bann wrote a 12-page memo in which he brags about how he made former President Bill Clinton filthy rich, generating $100 million of personal income for him. Donald Trump today campaigning in Ohio. There he blasted the stench of corruption emanating from the Clinton cartel.
Just today we read about Clinton confidant Doug Brand bragging that he had funneled tens of millions of dollars to Bill Clinton, Inc. through the foundation donations, paid speeches, and consulting contracts. Mr. Band called the arrangement unorthodox. The rest of us call it outright corrupt.
That only one of 3 rallies that Donald Trump holding in the state of Ohio today. He's holding another event in Geneva, Ohio, scheduled for this hour, and we'll be bringing it to you when Donald Trump takes the stage. Our top story tonight, WikiLeaks releasing a bombshell email today. The Clinton campaign struggling to deal with Bill Clinton's sex scandals. An email from January of this year laying out some of the key questions that Hillary might have to face from the media. Questions including, will you apologize? Well, a 2011 memo reveals the plan yielded more than $30 million for him personally, with $66 million to be paid out later. That is a lot of speaking. Joining me now to talk about the massive Clinton cartel corruption and cronyism exposed in these latest emails dropped by WikiLeaks versus Trump's call to drain the swamp. We're joined tonight by attorney Ebony Williams, Republican campaign strategist Tony Sayegh, both Fox News contributors. This is getting worse by the day. WikiLeaks is, and I'm going to say it again, irrespective of those who have any distress or any claim against WikiLeaks, the fact is they are doing a job the national liberal media refuses to do, revealing the corruption and the scale and the dimension of that corruption in this campaign.
Well, look, I know they're not your favorite publication, but even the New York Times today had to lead with this. That is how mainstream.
To the women who were wrongly smeared by your husband and his allies. And how is what Bill Clinton did different from what Bill Cosby did? The latest emails also reveal the shock and the anger surrounding Clinton's decision to use a private email server for official government business. Neera Tanden she currently helps run the Clinton campaign transition team, emailed Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta in the summer of 2015. Quote, "Do we actually know who told Hillary she could use a private email? And has that person been drawn and quartered?" Like the whole thing is bleeping insane. Also spelling out damaging emails from former Clinton intimate Doug Band, who laid out how Bill Clinton lined his pockets by steering donors for the Clinton Foundation to hire him for speeches and consulting. Corruption throughout the entire Clinton cartel as to the size of the monies in